Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts is officially in a make or break season. We'll discuss him and two other players who need big years to save their dynasty value on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 that you can use on whatever with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Pro Football Focus and Behind the Steel Curtain. On today's show, we're going to be discussing three players who are in make or break seasons that really need to have good seasons to save their dynasty value. And let's start with, this one hurts, Kyle Pitts from the Atlanta Falcons. Kate, why is this such a big year for Kyle Pitts?
I will say there's probably no better time to grab a Kyle Pitts share if you are still a believer in Kyle Pitts. Now, obviously, things haven't felt great for Kyle Pitts since his breakout rookie season, over 1,000 receiving yards, only had one touchdown that year with the Atlanta Falcons. But Marcus, we are looking at still a very, very young tight end who I'll say, suffered an injury in his sophomore season here in the NFL. Played, I think, most of 2023, again, coming off from a pretty major knee injury that I don't think anybody really knew the extent of. He suffered an MCL injury, but turns out he actually had an MCL and a PCL repair, underwent surgery, ended up playing all 17 games in the 2023 season coming off of that injury, which again was a much more significant knee injury than I think anybody really gave him credit for. Now, I don't think there's any way we can overlook the upgraded pass catcher, right? How much of Kyle Pitts' disappointing year came on the back of bad quarterback play? I think the answer to that is a lot. And you pair that with the health, like, why aren't we going back to the well on Kyle Pitts? Because I think fantasy managers are just kind of like tired of getting hurt, and I'm ready to get hurt again.
So here's the reason why it's a make or break season. He's kind of out of excuses because obviously the big excuse was the quarterback play. Playing with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder nuked a lot of his value, which is totally understandable, right? Now he gets Kirk Cousins, who we saw last year played with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson was the number one tight end in fantasy for most of the year until he got hurt at the end of the season. Like, we've seen Kirk Cousins really elevate all the players around him. So if Kyle Pitts doesn't have a good season, we can't blame the quarterback play. Now, it could be because of injury, right? But if Kyle Pitts gets injured again, and this is the third season in a row that's kind of derailed by injury, at what point are we just going to not trust him to stay healthy? Now he becomes a major injury risk. He kind of needs to have a 900-plus yard season and like 8 or 9 touchdowns at minimum to save his dynasty value, where he's being drafted as tight end 5, tight end 6, tight end 7.
Yeah, and I do think that's going to be a big part of that. And I mean, I understand why fantasy managers aren't exactly excited to dip their toes into the well. Over his NFL seasons, his 3 NFL seasons, literally ranks 0th percentile in terms of separation.
Is that a word?
Percentage.
Last.
That's last. That's a fancy way of saying last. 85th percentile in PFF receiving grade, 87th percentile in yards per route run, which is a very sticky stat and probably the most intriguing of all of these stats when you're looking at Kyle Pitts. 18th percentile in contested catch percentage, 16th percentile in yards after the catch per reception. But here is the kicker. just as he ranked last in separation percentage, you know where else he ranked dead last, Marcus? In catchable target
Mm.
percentage, which that is the key here. And I think that proves all the more why he is out of excuses. If he's playing with a Kirk Cousins, even if he's playing with a Michael Penix, let's say the world drops on a dime, like I still think he's out of excuses in that regard. So we've already established why he's on the hot seat. And I will say, like, even for being on the hot seat, he's still a really young tight end, despite the fact that he came out as this
Mhm.
generational athlete who can, play kind of all over the field. Like, there were no questions about the potential for Kyle Pitts, still a really young tight end, right? Who had played in an Arthur Smith offense that might not have been conducive to his skill set. We mentioned the health. So, if you are still a believer in Kyle Pitts, is now the time to trade for him? Like, do you feel like this is a good window?
No, because he's still really expensive. Tight end 4, according to dynastyleaguefootball.com. Am I trading Dalton Kincaid for him? No. Am I trading Brock Bowers for him? Definitely no. I had to think about it first. Like, no, I'm not. And I love Kyle Pitts. He's one of my favorite players in the league, but until I can see him be healthy and put up numbers, I'm just willing to wait. I'll be willing to pay more with a little bit more proven production, right? Like if he goes out and he has multiple 70-yard games and a touchdown, and it's just becoming a trend, I have no problem paying whatever it costs to go get him. I'm not doing it now. I'm holding out because I've got to see him get back to what he did as a rookie compared to the last 2 seasons.
I think that's fair. I'm actually probably I'm more intrigued in buying at that standpoint. Like, let's look at some recent trades, right? Kyle Pitts for the 104 in this year's draft.
It's probably Brock Bowers.
Yeah. So,
Bowers for me.
all right. Let's see. Kyle Pitts in the 307 in this year's draft for Pat Fryermuth, the 112 in the 310.
I'd rather have Pitts there.
Okay. Um,
I'm just
mm,
not a big Pat Fryermuth fan, and I know. Listen, Kyle Pitts just got out of the Arthur Smith offense where he got almost no targets. Good luck, Pat Fryermuth. Good luck.
let's see. Kyle Pitts for Carolina Panthers rookie tight end Jatavian Sanders, the 506, and a 2025 fourth round pick.
Oh my gosh, give me Kyle Pitts. No, that's the price.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. I know the ADP right now shows Kyle Pitts relatively high, but when we're looking at some real live trades that are being shared on Dynasty League Football, like I actually think the trade market seems a bit more palatable than you would guess based on his standing in the ADP market.
Now, where did you take him in our recent Superflex draft, Kate?
I think that was somewhere around tight end 6, tight end
Oh,
7.
see, that's more manageable. But tight end 4, if you're taking Brock Bowers and Dalton Kincaid ahead of him, that's where it gets a little bit iffy for me.
That's fair. And okay, so I pulled up the ADP and I took Kyle Pitts. Let's see. Sam Laporta, tight end 1 off the board. Then Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers, and then Kyle Pitts. So actually tight end 5, which that's higher than I thought it was. But I mean, I think that's the appropriate
Probably.
ranking for Kyle Pitts, even amidst all the question marks. Like, what are you going to say? Like David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson maybe
No.
is the one guy that you can justify ahead of Kyle Pitts there. But
He's coming off a major injury.
outside of that, like, are there really any other tight ends that you're going to take ahead of Kyle Pitts? I don't think so.
No. I'm still willing to take the chance there. It's just when you get to that next tier of Bowers, Kincaid, I would just take those guys. I think they're in a
Yeah.
little bit better situation, and they've proven to be more durable. So, all right, Kyle Pitts isn't the only player in a make or break season. Let's talk about Deshaun Watson with the Cleveland Browns next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, let's discuss Deshaun Watson, who I've been pretty adamant that I've been buying him this offseason. But let's discuss why he is in a make or break season. What's going on here?
Here's the thing with Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's no question that he has a ton of upside, right? It's just been a while since we've seen it. Now, looking at his fantasy points per game ranks, you look at his first 4 NFL seasons, he did not once finish outside of like beyond QB7. Finishes the QB1 in fantasy points per game as a rookie, then QB4, QB2, QB7 in 2020. Had the off year in 2021, and then we get to his tenure with the Browns, which he has finished as the QB 25 or worse in back-to-back seasons. Now, I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson, like there isn't some flick of, something remaining in it. It's just it's been a long time since we've seen it. But I do think the Browns have made a concerted effort to like upgrade the receiving core. They traded for Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, who I still think maybe are a little bit better than the play that we've seen in. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just like holding on to my.
I think they're NFL wide receivers, like good complementary. I think when the Broncos selected Jeudy, like I think they thought he was going to be a number one. I think he's really more of like a high end wide receiver 3.
Yes, and I think that that's still probably an upgrade over what they've had. Now they have a duo of, Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy. You have Elijah Moore in the slot. You have David Njoku, who really just totally broke out in his 2023 season, albeit with Joe Flacco at quarterback. Like, I think this is the point. They've given him the contract, right? They've given him, the excuses. He's had the injuries. Now he returns healthy with the best wide receiver core that he's had to date in the Cleveland Browns system. Like, it's time to produce, man.
It's time. The concerning thing for me here is over the last 2 years, like I understand why the fantasy points per game are low because, I mean, first of all, he hasn't played a lot. But what's concerning is you look at some of the stable metrics according to Pro Football Focus, 16th percentile clean pocket grade, 7th percentile on no play action passes, 14th percentile on early downs, 27th percentile grade on late downs, 33rd percentile on throws at or beyond the sticks, and 18th percentile sack rate. Like, he has not been an average quarterback during his time at the Browns. However, what keeps me coming back is I remember, I think 2 of the last 3 games, they played the Titans early in the year. He lit up the Titans. It was like one of the best games I've seen him play in a long time. Looked absolutely outstanding. And then in the second half against the Ravens, in the game that he got hurt, he was great. He led them on a comeback drive. They beat the Ravens. They scored, I think, 33 points in that game. He was unbelievable in the second half of that game. 2 days later, we find out he's out for the year. So now he's coming off a shoulder injury that's going to have him rehabbing for the last 6 or 7 months. But this offense is so talented, Kate. And I love Kevin Stefanski so much as a play caller. I want to keep buying, but I understand, like, if it goes poorly this year, and let's say it's just more of the same, maybe he's a little bit better, like incrementally better. but kind of still outside of the top 12, 14-ish quarterbacks. I think Cleveland's going to be looking for a new quarterback next year.
I mean, what's crazy is he could still improve and still be a below average quarterback, Marcus. That's like how low the bar has been. All right, Marcus, I want to play a little game with you. Okay. And it's called Name the Date Deshaun Watson Did That. All right. So
no, this is scary.
This is a scary game, but you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes.
Okay.
All right. Name the date that Deshaun Watson last threw for a 300-yard passing game.
Oh man, it had to be back in 2020. So let's say October 15th, 2020.
Actually close. January 3rd, 2021, Houston Texans versus Tennessee Titans, week 17 of the 2020 season.
Yeah.
How about his last game with 25 or more fantasy points?
Oh man, I'll say
name that date.
I say early 20. Let's say November 1st, 2020.
Okay, it actually is the same game in which he last had his 300-yard passing game, that week 17 of 2020. How about his last 3 passing touchdown game?
I feel like he might have done it against the Steelers in October, but tell me.
Get out of here. No, January 1st, 2023. It was the Browns versus the Washington Commanders, week 17 of the 2022 season, which, Marcus, I don't think any of us are going to give the Commanders any credence in terms of their ability to defend the pass. So that one feels kind of, but like, just to be clear, he hasn't done any of these in a long time.
It's not great.
Like that is, something I think to be said for where we're at with Deshaun Watson and just how long it's been since we've actually seen him be a true fantasy relevant quarterback. And it's scary.
I just want to put this in the range of possibilities. I could see a scenario play out where Watson plays really well this year. Remember, the Browns won 11 games last year and they rested everybody in week 18. Like, they were a really, really good team. He kind of just continues playing playing maybe close to what Joe Flacco did. The Browns win 11 or 12 games again. They make the playoffs. And we actually see the Browns give him a contract extension, right? They can spread some of the guaranteed money out. Like, I think that's a possibility. I really do. I think there's also a possibility that Deshaun Watson isn't a starting quarterback come week 1 of 2025. And I think those are both in the range of possibilities here. And I wouldn't be shocked if either one happened.
That is a terrifying range of possibilities.
Yes.
But, okay. Like, let's now, last but not least, let's just look at the value. I think we all know why we're scared of Deshaun Watson in many ways. But let's talk about his dynasty value. QB 19 in the latest batch of Dynasty ADP. So I'm going to name some players being drafted behind him in in the latest batch of ADP, and I want you to tell me who you would prefer: Deshaun Watson or Kirk Cousins?
Watson.
JJ McCarthy or Deshaun Watson?
McCarthy by a lot.
Same. Bryce Young or Deshaun Watson?
Probably Bryce.
Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson?
Watson.
Will Levis or Deshaun Watson?
I'll go Watson.
All right, but like, can we note that you're hesitating on every single one of these? That's how
it's not great.
This situation's getting, but
it's not great.
I understand the upside here, especially given the upgrade in weapons. I do think that they've done a pretty good job. And I think if you trust, Kevin Stefanski as a play caller, like, maybe that's it. How feasible do you think it would be for the Browns to actually, for real, like, if things go totally wrong this year, do you see a situation where they actually, move on? Like, is that really in the realm of possibility?
I mean, if they cut him after the 2024 season, they could. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, they would have a dead cap hit of $137 million if they cut him after the 2025 season.
Okay.
That's a lot. That's almost like a half your salary cap. But there's just no way if he's bad for the third straight season, there's just no way that you can bring him back to be your starter. Maybe what you do is you consider more of a quarterback competition, and maybe you try to draft somebody early. Remember, the Browns do have their first round pick next year, or maybe you try to sign somebody else to come in. But I do think there's a possibility that he's not their starting quarterback in week 1 of 2025.
I mean, I think Joe Flacco made that, in seeing Joe Flacco ball in this offense, made that all the more realistic possibility, even despite the finances. So I think we can all agree the range of outcomes for Deshaun Watson might be wider than like any player here in 2024, because either he is going to be completely worthless, both to an NFL team and your dynasty roster, or he is going to be like, I don't know, a guy that could climb like 10 spots in the
It's
QB rankings in
nothing
Dynasty.
is surprising. Like
Yeah.
it's a huge year for Deshaun Watson, to say the least. Let's talk about a receiver in the AFC South that we are keeping an eye on next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and in the NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. I've been so fascinated by the NBA playoffs. This T-Wolves Nugget series is kind of taking a little bit of an interesting turn, going from 2-0, 2-2. We've yet to have a home team win in that series. Absolutely incredible. This is the absolute best time to bet on the NBA. So go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are discussing 3 players entering make or break seasons. And let's discuss Treylon Burks, third-year wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. What do we have here, Kate?
It has not been a great couple of seasons here for Treylon Burks, a former first-round pick. And let's be clear, the Titans kind of set him up for a gigantic potential failure here by trading him straight up for AJ Brown. Like, what a monumental mistake that was. Like, y'all should have just paid him the contract extension. Bold take here. But that, like, trading them straight up for one almost made you think like they think this guy could be the next AJ Brown. And
Correct.
you look at his body type, you look at all that, and you're like, maybe I could see he's this big bodied wide receiver, looks like a running back with the ball in his hands. And boom, he has come out to disappoint in such a massive way. After a relatively, like, not like promising rookie season, but like over 400 receiving yards, only had 1 touchdown, but like, there was at
Dealt
least
with concussions that season. Yeah,
yes,
a lot of injury related stuff.
which has been, that is kind of I think a long-term concern that you're considering in his dynasty value. But now he is in a circumstance where like he's all but been forced out of this Titans offense. I think he's about to get a clean slate here in his career. And that is going to be a moment where, maybe things didn't work out in Tennessee. Now they have DeAndre Hopkins, they brought in Calvin Ridley, they brought in Tyler Boyd, like all of these really old wide receivers, and just forced Treylon Burks down the depth chart. If he gets a fresh start with a I don't know, a more creative play caller that can utilize Treylon Burks as the power slot he's meant to be, like, I think he needs a new opportunity. But once he gets that one new opportunity, if he doesn't do anything with it, he's done.
And that's the thing that I keep coming back to, Kate, is like, where is the spot that he could land that would save his dynasty value? Because the more and more I think about this, I'm not sure what it is, because I think he has to be a slot receiver. And that's why the Tyler Boyd signing hurt so much, is Tyler Boyd is only a slot receiver, right? So where does he go? Does he go to the Jets. I mean, the Jets just drafted Malachi Corley, who in a lot of ways is a similar player. Does he
Yes.
go to like Baltimore and play in the slot there? I honestly, I mean, could the Chargers? I mean, the Chargers just drafted Lab McConkey, and I think Quentin Johnston needs to play in the slot. So, where could he land, in your opinion, that could save his dynasty value?
That's a really interesting question. And I'm actually going to maybe circle back here to the Cleveland Browns, which this might be like kind of a duplicative because they have Elijah Moore there in the slot. But, you mentioned Malachi Corley and the way that like he's kind of a similar player to a Treylon Burks. I actually think Treylon Burks and Elijah Moore have very different play styles. Like I think that could be more of a less duplicative kind of thing. I don't think Elijah Moore, for as much as I like him, he was, one of my favorite wide receivers in that draft class. I don't think he's necessarily, earned a spot as the starting slot receiver as a given point blank. I think that's a spot where he could realistically compete for the starting slot role. And I think he could realistically maybe win out.
I got
Maybe.
one. I got one.
Okay.
Have things come full circle, right? The Titans traded AJ Brown to the Eagles for a first round pick, and they turned around and drafted Treylon Burks. What if we sent Treylon Burks to Philadelphia, had him play in the slot? Right now, their slot receivers are Paris Campbell, and that's about it. Kellen Moore actually has a lot of experience with these bigger slot receivers. I think Treylon Burks in Philly, you give him another big body guy that can block a little bit in the run game. I think that's a spot where I don't know if it saves his dynasty value, but it does make him a better player.
I think that is a very interesting pick. And it is with a quarterback that we really like, and a quarterback that has produced many fantasy wide receivers. Now, again, for the purposes of his dynasty value, maybe that doesn't do anything really in the immediate, right? Like maybe
Yes.
that kind of confuses things. But if he redeems himself as an NFL player, he might get an opportunity coming. Like as a reminder, he is heading into year 3 of his rookie contract. Like there's a realistic chance that like wherever he goes, maybe he plays the next 2 years and then he hits free agency, and he can really, if he redeems himself over these next 2 seasons, can really change the trajectory of his
Yes, I agree.
career. I still don't know that he's a guy that I'm looking to buy in Dynasty, but I
No.
think this is probably the better question. He's obviously in a make or break situation. Is he a player that you would rather trade away on your Dynasty rosters wherever you have him, just on the off chance that he flops? Or is he a player that you would rather hold? I don't think anybody's necessarily targeting him in a trade, but is he a hold or is he a sell?
Probably a hold, because I don't think you're going to get anything out of him in a trade. So I would rather hold on to him, bury him at the bottom of my bench, and wait and see, because otherwise you're just getting pennies on the dollar. And that's just not a great way to operate your dynasty leagues. But all right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go follow the show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Go download the podcast, check it out, subscribe, rate us, review us. Please do all those things to help us out. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.